Apple's head of AI is out. The company just announced that John Giannandrea, who's been there for 6 years, is stepping down as Senior Vice President for Machine Learning and AI Strategy, and he's going to retire fully from the company in the spring of next year. Now, if you are a regular viewer or listener of Tech Gets Real, you will know that I don't usually cover tech industry news updates like this, at least not in this show. However, this is a fantastic opportunity to talk about Apple and its AI strategy, what's gone wrong, what has arguably gone right-ish, and how Apple could still make a success of its AI efforts. This is Tech Gets Real. I'm David Meyer. If you like this, like and subscribe. If you don't, well, I'm sorry. Maybe next time. It's no secret that Apple is not exactly ahead of the curve when it comes to AI. It's not a good look for the company that it hasn't managed to harness AI to meaningfully enhance its products, especially in the context of the wider tech scene, where all companies are claiming that they've incorporated AI in life-changing and magical ways. But this is partly because of how Apple usually does things. It's very rarely the first company to release some new technology. Rather, it holds back until it can figure out a way to make it look like an Apple innovation when it finally gets round to releasing its refined version. I mean, you can see how they tried this with AI itself. Having stayed out of the AI game entirely for quite a while, they then released what they called Apple Intelligence, trying to claim that AI stands for some Apple thing. That was pushing their luck, I think. But Apple's play-it-safe modus operandi has in some ways been particularly counterproductive when it comes to AI. And that's because over the last couple of years, the state-of-the-art just progressed so quickly. It's very, very difficult to play catch-up when the goalposts keep moving, and you're the kind of company that only releases one major software update per year. It also hasn't helped that when Apple has tried to play things more aggressively with AI, the results have been kind of embarrassing. And here I'm thinking in particular of the Apple Intelligence News Summaries feature, which the company had to pull at the beginning of this year because it was giving people false information. So the idea of the feature is to basically collate the various news alerts on the subject into one handy notification that tells iPhone users what they need to know. After the murder of the United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson a year ago, Apple Intelligence News Summaries sent people an alert saying that the alleged killer had in fact also killed himself, which he hadn't. It was nonsense. So anyway, Apple pulled the feature in January, and it only re-released it 8-9 months later with the release of iOS 26. And conversely, many users have found that Apple plays it too safe when it comes to things like image generation. Its image playground tool is pretty heavily censored. There's lots of things that it won't let you generate. And in a context where rival image generation services from the likes of Google and OpenAI are much more free about what they'll let you generate, many users just found that this was overly censored. They could just go and use the rival services instead. So, too hasty, not fast enough. It kind of feels like Apple just can't win when it comes to AI, and it's no surprise that the company wants to correct that. And Giannandrea is going as a result. He had already lost control of the project for making Siri smarter with generative AI. We'll come back to that in a moment. Back in March, that was handed over to Mike Rockwell, who was Apple's head of the Vision Pro project. And many of the other responsibilities that Giannandrea has been handling will now be under the control of Amar Subramanya, who has been brought over from Microsoft, where he spent 4 months as corporate vice president for AI. Subramanya was previously at Google for many years, where he was most recently the head of engineering for the Gemini virtual assistant. So he has a deep knowledge of what the competition has been doing with its Siri competitors, Gemini in the case of Google and Copilot in the case of Microsoft. He knows what's going on, and he's going to be leading Apple's AI model efforts and its AI safety, machine learning research, all these things. Now, one reason I'm cautiously optimistic about Apple's chances in AI are because of certain advances that have been made in the last year. You may recall at the beginning of the year, there was this Chinese model called DeepSeek that came out, and it kind of roiled the markets for a while. And that was mainly because it was allegedly much, much cheaper to train than the models being released by the likes of OpenAI and Google. But the other big advance that was made with DeepSeek was that it showed how you could take the knowledge, how you could take the smarts from a really big AI model, and you could essentially shrink it down into a smaller AI model. And this is a process called distillation. It wasn't a new thing, but it was something that DeepSeek just did better than anyone else had done before. And what it essentially means is taking a very, very small AI model, the kind that you could run on a phone or a laptop, and training it on the output of a big model. And this kind of validated the approach that Apple would much rather take, because while the company does have many cloud services, and iCloud is a big chunk of its business, it is primarily a devices company. It's about selling you premium computers, smartphones, watches, and what have you. And yes, Apple has its own big AI models that it runs on servers somewhere, and it has all kinds of clever privacy-protecting technology to let you use that with your phone. But really, Apple wants a small, capable AI model that can run on the iPhone itself or on the Mac itself. There are huge advantages to doing this, of course. Number one being privacy. If you don't have to send information off to some cloud server, then it can't be intercepted en route by some intelligence service. There's also speed to consider. If you're dealing with something like live translation, you again don't want to have to send that off to the internet where it goes somewhere, has to come back. Much better to have it running on the device itself, if possible. Now, if you've got a very recent iPhone, like the 15 Pro or Pro Max or the 16 Pro, I think, then you've already got a small AI model running on the device. But it's only able to handle very basic tasks. Anything that requires more intensive computational stuff, the state-of-the-art AI work that people turn to OpenAI for or to Google, then Apple will have to hand it off to one of those big rivals because its own big AI models running on its servers just aren't as capable. But that's the current state of affairs. And again, this year has demonstrated how it is possible to bake serious smarts into a very small AI model of the size that you can run on a phone or a laptop. And Apple has promised a major upgrade to Apple Intelligence next year. It kind of had to because it made big promises in the first place and then it couldn't quite deliver because the stuff wasn't working quite as well as it wanted. So anyway, that upgrade's coming and I would be very surprised if it didn't bring serious improvements over the on-device Apple Intelligence functionality we see today. And here I have to declare something of a vested interest because I wrote a book once. Wait, let me find it. It's called Control Shift. And I published this, when did I publish this? 8 years ago, so about 5 years before ChatGPT came out. And in a section towards the end of the book, I talk about AI agents and how I really like the idea, and I still love the idea, of an agent that can act on your behalf, that really, really knows you very, very well and helps you handle the complexities of online life. Because it knows you so well, it can represent you and kind of interface with other services on your behalf. So the problem that I identified back here, and that I still have, is that it requires relying on big corporations and handing over loads of personal data to them. So if I may quote myself, which is kind of embarrassing but also kind of cool, the smartphone in your pocket may be millions of times more powerful than the computers that put people on the moon half a century ago, but it can't begin to rival the might of Google or Facebook's data centers. The cloud is simply the most economical way to both to process our requests and to use them as training material. However, our processors are becoming ever more energy efficient and the cost of storage continues to fall, etc., etc. At some point, AI technology will have developed to the point where it no longer needs to be tethered to a data center in order to meaningfully interact with and serve us. Well, I'd say we're almost there now. So the question is Apple the right company to deliver on that kind of vision of a personal AI assistant that runs on your device and is so trustworthy that you can let it really get to know you? And I would say yes and no. No, because as I explain in the book, if you're going to have that level of trust, then you want a personal AI assistant that can be audited. You want it to be open source in the sense that people can poke around the code, see how it works, check that it's not being used to spy on you. And Apple doesn't really do open source. Everything it does is very closed and proprietary and locked down. And it claims that there are big security benefits to this approach, and there's probably a lot of truth in that. But it does mean that if you're going to be dealing with an Apple on-device personal AI assistant that you're supposed to really, really trust, you're going to have to take the company's word for it that everything is kosher. On the plus side, I would much rather take Apple's word for that than the word of a company like Google, for example. I mean, Google and Meta, these companies exist to exploit your personal data and make lots of money off you that way. Apple is trying to make money off you another way, so in that sense, it is more trustworthy. The other reason that I want Apple to succeed with its approach is it's the one big tech company that isn't constantly trying to shove AI down my throat. I mean, Microsoft and Google and Meta are just all the time prompting you to use their AI services, even when it doesn't really add anything. Do you want me to summarize that for you? Do you want me to write that for you? Please turn on AI mode. It might justify the hundreds of billions of dollars that we've spent investing in this stuff. I think if any company is going to do it in a kind of discreet, thoughtful, just add the functionality without doing a stupid song and dance about it, it's Apple. So let's hope that the new AI leadership at that company does manage to turn things around and deliver, well, what I want. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this episode. And as always, please leave a comment or send me an email at david@techgetsreal.com. I'd like to know how much you trust the current AI services that are on the market, and whether the idea of having a powerful AI running on your device is as important to you as it is to me. Maybe I have something to learn. Anyway, see you next week.